So the first question I would like to ask you is, do you know what your best selection was? What was your best selection? Anybody? Of course, coming to Adobe Max. Do you know what your second best selection was? I don't have to tell you that, you're intelligent. Well, so how many of you are coming to Adobe Max for the very first time? That's amazing. How many of you are seeing me for the very first time? Oh no, thank you. Seems like I'm not that popular. All right, so let me ask you the first question. Why do we make a selection? Just shout out the answer. Why do we make a selection? Change background. Something else? Isolate, yes. Anything else? Yes, ma'am? To get rid of something. Anything else? Compositing, it's a big part of it. All right, so all of this, targeting, selecting, adjusting, all of this is due to selections. We make selections to do that. Now, what if I told you that you could achieve all of this without even making a selection or without even making a complex selection? That's what we are looking at today. So the first thing is, let me take you to this one. What is the best selection method? Can anybody tell me what is the best selection method? Like you have zeroed in on it, like you really like it, that's the one you're going for. No matter what image is thrown at you, you just go to that selection method. What's the best? Pen tool, select subject. Anything else? Channels. What if you have a black and white image? Anything else? Magic wand. Channels is very useful, especially when you have something that separates red and green or blue. Select subject is very amazing, like when you have a subject with you. But what is really the best selection method that's going to work with everything? Masking, it's the same thing as selection. Yeah, but so we're going to get to that. That's a great answer. Anything else? No? All right. So actually, the question is there a best selection method? There isn't. There isn't at all. However, there is a best selection method for your image. Your image is going to determine what is going to be the best selection. A lot of people ask me, Unmesh, what's the best selection? What should I use? What should I go for? I would say, ask your image. Let your image decide what is the best selection for you. I know this is inspirational, so I'm going to give you some points on what to look at an image. All right, so now let me show you a couple examples. Like I'm giving you something to do, right? This is not a class to just sit and check your messages. So have a look at this photo. First question is, what is common in the area that you want to remove? The color? The color is the common theme in the area that you want to remove. Let's say you want to remove the background, right? You want to change the background. What is common in the area you want to remove? Color. Now, what property of this image separates the subject from the background? What property of this image separates the subject from the background? Color. It's still color, right? There can be the same answer for two questions. So let's have a look at this one. In this case, let's say your client sends you this, he or she didn't even send you a transparent logo. Just send you this. Maybe it's a low resolution something. And it has a white background and a black logo. And you want to make it transparent. You want to use it for branding in a lot of different places. So what do you think is common in the area that you want to remove? Well, it is color. It is white. Okay, now I want you to answer this. What is the property that separates the subject from the background? Contrast, or in other words, we can say brightness. The subject is dark, That is white. It's of the same thing. If you make white darker, it's going to become that, right? So let's have a look at this. This one. This is a little complicated. I want you to tell me what is common in the area you want to remove. Let's say you want to replace the sky. What is common in the area that you want to remove? That is the sky. What is common? What a brilliant answer. Who said that? Big round of applause for whoever you said. What's your name? What's your name, man? Jen? Yes. Am I saying it right? Yes. Round of applause for Jen. She is absolutely correct. You must be an expert. You should be teaching here. All right, so blue. Answer is, I'm going to repeat that for you. The thing is, the common thing that is in the background is that in the area that you want to remove is the color, and the separation is determined by brightness, or in other words, contrast. So what does that tell us? We're going to use a technique which deals with brightness. We're going to use a technique which deals with color. We're going to use a technique which deals with contrast in all of these images. So looking at just two things. First, what is common in the area you want to remove? And second, which property of the image separates the subject from the background? That will decide what is going to be the best technique for you. So last one, have a look at this one. What is common in the area you want to remove? I'm going to say it for you. This is the area that you want to remove. The background is close to 50% gray. And there's a dedicated technique to just remove that. Okay, we have looked at a lot of examples. Let's move back to the slides. So this is an important slide. What's common in the area you want to remove? The answer will decide the technique to use. Okay? You'll be able to download the PPT anyways. I gave you the link in the beginning, and at the end also, if you can remind me, I'll give you a link in the end as well. All right. Let's move back here. Now, let's move to some fundamental selection technique. I don't want to save all of that. All right. The first one we are looking at is the color range and the right way to do it. So I have a lot of examples. So I'm not really sure whether we'll be able to do all of that today, but I'll try my best. So when is the session ending, by the way? 2:30? Oh, we have a lot of time. So let's start with this one, the first example here. So we need to inform Photoshop about every shade of blue there is. And the way to do that is by, first of all, let's go to select and then color range. Okay? Now, it's selecting a strange color. Here's what you need to do. First things first, make sure that your select is selected to sampled colors, right? What do we want to remove? The colors that we sample. That's why it is the sampled colors. Second, decrease the fuzziness to about 10%. Third, make sure that the selection preview is first set to none so that you can see the entire image already. It's like with no changes made. Now, take the first eyedropper right here and click on a blue area. Now, you would see something happen here if you have selection checked. White are the areas which are selected, black are the areas which are not selected. Now, you need to add all of these shades of blue. So you would take the plus eyedropper, and you can just click and add. A lot of people know that. But what I would suggest you to do, which a lot of people do not know, is that you can click and hold and draw around the subject to make a better selection. So if you just click and hold and draw just like this, it'll just make an entire selection of the things around her. If there's an area left out, just keep on drawing, and there you go. Have a look at this. Such a nice selection, isn't it? So now you need to decide, okay, so what's going to be the background? It's going to be brighter, or is it going to be darker? So if it's going to be a brighter background, I would change the selection preview to white matte. Now, and if it's going to be a darker background, change it to black matte. Okay, because that's going to be two extremes. You need to look at whether your mask is working on the extreme white and black. If it does, it's a great mask. Now, anything that is selected is in blue. Anything that is not selected is white. So we need to invert that. So how do you think we can invert that? Anybody? Click on invert. There's an invert button right there. Have a look. So click on invert. Now, here is the fun part. Zoom in. See, the edges are not proper. Just keep on increasing the fuzziness until you see it's proper. Now, if you increase it too much, areas inside of the subject will also be selected. So beware of that. Have a look here. Inside of the subject, we have blacks. We don't want that. We can correct it to an extent, but this is the level that we want to go for. About 4850 for this image is fine. Okay, but we still have the blues. Now, once we have the subject selected, you can click on the mask button right there. Okay, and then maybe put up a white background. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose solid color and choose white. I'm so happy that you guys are taking notes, but I just want to let you know that I have been told that this class is being recorded, so you will have access to it later. So now, there's a cameraman right there at the back. Big shout out. So, now, have a look at the blues. I want to ask you, we were just talking about this. What do we need to solve here? We need to solve the brightness or we need to solve the color? Color. It is blue. And the brightness is similar. The color is at fault here. So what if we could create a brand new layer, right? And if we take a brush and if we just paint, if we take a sample from here and if we just paint it, that would be stupid to do. However, if you just limit it to the hair by holding the Alt key or the Option key and clicking on the line between these two and create a clipping mask, that's still stupid because we just want to change the color. Change the blend mode from normal to, where did that go? Color. All right, now it's looking intelligent. So take a sample and just paint over it. Solved. How easy was that? Right? The problem is not the mask. The mask is perfect. The problem is that the hair is so thin that it takes the color of the background. Okay? All right. So I have already finished this. I wanted to show you the finished result so that you know what we're... All right. So this is the finished result. It looks so much more cleaner. I took the time to do it. The same thing. Color blend mode right here and just as a clipping mask. All right. Now let's look at another example. Now this is also going to be using the select color range. However, I want to show you something new here. And I want to show you why I prefer color range over channels. So let me have a look at this. Whoops, I needed to open that in Photoshop. There you are. Now, remember we were just talking about my favorite feature in the beginning in Photoshop 2020, which is close others. See how many documents we have opened up? And we just want to work on this one, and just we want to clear the mess. Earlier, you had to just open up every document and close it one by one. But now in Photoshop 2020, you can go to File and Close Others, and everything else will close. I don't want to save anything, apply to all, don't want to save anything, and everything else will automatically close, and only the document that you're working on will be open. Now, in this case, if we had to use channels, in channels, what you have to do, you have to find out the channel which has the most contrast between the subject and the background. But in this case, red doesn't have any contrast. Green has a little contrast, but the area inside of the dog is also darker, so we cannot use that. Blue definitely doesn't have much contrast. So in this case, where the shades of color are too close to each other, like have a look at the hair of the dog. It's so close to red. In this case, color range would be so much better than channels. So that's why I prefer I first use color range, and if it doesn't work, maybe I will go to channels. It's just a maybe. All right, let's go to select and then color range. Now, let's first of all decrease the fuzziness to 10. In this case, there will be a little difference here. Now, keep in mind white matte is selected, and you can change it to none. With the plus eyedropper, just draw around the adorable dog. And once you're done, it's already inverted, so we don't have to invert it. Change it to, let's say, white matte, all right? And increase the fuzziness to the point where it looks okay. But there's a problem here. If I take it beyond a certain point, parts of the dog, it's getting black, it's just getting out of selection. No problem at all. We can fix that later. But it gives us something to begin with. Hit OK. Now, click on the mask button right there. Now, let's create a white background. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose solid color, and we're going to choose white. Hit OK. Let's put it under it. Now, to fix it, you can just open up the mask view, hold the Alt key or the Option key, and then click on the mask. And let me give you one trick, which most of you already know. I'm assuming that. So if you take the brush, and if you take white as the foreground color, if you don't know, learn it now. So take the brush, white as the foreground color, and if you just paint over it, it's going to leak, right? It is leaking. However, so, you know, it's not good. But if you change the blend mode of the brush from normal to overlay, now when you paint, it won't leak, right? It just won't leak outside. When you choose overlay and white as the foreground color, it will only paint on the areas which are closer to white, and it won't paint on areas which are black. If you do the opposite, black, vice versa. It will only paint on areas closer to black. It won't paint on white. So now white is selected. You can easily just, if you want, you can decrease the flow right there, and then just paint over it to correct it. Now, let's say you took the time and you have corrected all of this. There's no problem at all. This is just you. Zip, zap, done. All of that is done. I'm assuming that it looks good. Now, the edges are a little problematic here. In the previous one, we dealt with color. But in this case, there is something else which is wrong. Can you tell me what it is, along with color? Contrast. Something else? Fringing. Of course, we're going to solve fringing. But what is it about the fringe that we need to solve? The color is definitely wrong. It's totally wrong. But the brightness is wrong at the same time. Because if you take away the brightness, let me just quickly do something to take away the brightness. This is not for you to learn, but let me just quickly do something to take away the brightness. Have a look. The edges are, you know, darker, right? Darker than the inside of it. So we have to completely fill it in. So let's create a brand new layer, and with the clone stamp tool right there, okay, we'll have to take a sample from the inside, make sure it is a clipping mask, hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on the line between these two, take a sample from here, and you would have to just fill that area in, right? Some areas you might have to paint. Take the paints and make sure you have a lower flow, like 10-20%, and then you would take a sample and then just start painting over those areas. So that's the way to do it. It will take you time, but you know, there's no other way because it's totally destroyed at the moment. And the colors are so close to each other. But if you give it time, you can actually make it happen. So I've already done it for you. I've done one side here for you. But if you want to see the finished result, and here it is. All right. So here's the finished result. You can, of course, I've changed the background to yellow. So there you go. I've changed it to something similar to red so that the mistakes won't show up. Sometimes you have to do some cheats to hide your mistakes. This is just one of them. All right. So we learned how to use color range. Any questions about this? Any questions, anything at all? And is there something you missed? Is there something you're not able to figure out? Do you have a doubt somewhere? Let me know. No questions? Nothing at all? Yes, ma'am. At the moment, color range is not available on the iPad app. I don't know when it's going to be available. Maybe Adobe will be a better company to answer that question. All right. So, any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Why couldn't it grab the red, like the color selection in those pairs?
So, are you talking about the drop-down menu inside of?
When you did the initial color selection?
Yes.
And it got all the red except what was in those
Yes, because it's of a different shade. Here's the thing. It selected all the red, but if I had to select the red on the edges, parts of the dog would also be selected and removed. We don't want that. All right. So thank you so much for the questions. Let's move on to the next one. And that is the magic of blend if. Now, when to use what? I'll get it, I don't know how to say it. I'll get to it later. Thank you. Let's move on to the next one. Sky, start. Let's open this example, and let's open the sky. All right. So here we have a nice image. We want to change the sky, and this is the sky. Now, if you want to remove the sky and put the new sky, of course, you would have to put the new sky beneath the image, right? Because when you cut it out, when you cut the sky out from this one, you should be able to see the new sky, right? So right now, you're not able to put it under it. Why is that? It's a background layer. So click on the lock. It unlocks. Now put it under it. OK. Now in this case, what is the property that is common in the area that you want to remove? Color. What is the property that differentiates the foreground from the background? It's contrast, it's brightness level, it's color. So two properties at play, brightness level and color. And blend if can deal with both of them. It can also deal with just brightness level. It can also deal with color as well. So double click on the right hand side of the layer, right? This opens up the layer style dialog box. If you take the slider of this layer, right, this layer from right to left, it will remove the bright areas of this layer from this layer. Make sense? If you take the slider of the underlying layer from right to left, it'll take the bright areas of the underlying layer, or the areas which are, or the layer which is under it, or the layer which is lying under it, underlying layer, from this layer. Okay? So we need to remove the bright areas of this layer from this layer. So you need to just take the slider of this layer from bright to dark, just like this. But it's not just bright. We also need to consider the color, right? Two properties at play. So it's not working well because we haven't considered the color. If you want to consider the color, just choose the channel blue because the sky is blue. Now when you do that, it is so much better, isn't it? So, yeah, I thought I would get a standing ovation. All right. Adobe did it. All right. Now, if you have a look at the edge, it's it's not very good. It's very harsh. So we need to make it soft. And the way we do that is by holding the Alt key or the Option key, and we click on the slider. It divides into two. So now, when you just break it apart, a little bit of the old sky will show up, which is good in a way that it will help you with blending stuff. So you can take it further here and there you have replaced the sky. Now, you can, of course, take your time to maybe just select the new sky and add a, let's say, curves adjustment layer and maybe brighten it or darken it. Unfortunately, curves is still not available on Photoshop on the iPad. I have a lot of grudges against it. So let's go to hue saturation, and let's decrease the saturation a little bit. All right, now it's matching a little bit more. Making sense? Any questions about this? No? Crystal clear? Yes, sir.
So I'm guessing both pictures have to be almost really similar for the blend.
It is advisable to do that, but it's not necessary. I always take pictures which are similar, especially when you're taking a photograph with a composite in mind. You do that anyway. So that is what I would suggest. But even if you had a different color, this would work. So let's go for the next example. Yes, sir.
Now that you've created that blend,
Thank you for bringing that up. So the question is, now that I've created the blend, is there a way to create a mask out of it? Well, there is. Photoshop doesn't give you direct access to do it, but there's a workaround in a way which we can do that. Here's the thing. We have used this image, right? We have applied blend if to this image. Let's apply a very hard, blend if so that you can create a better mask. Okay, hit OK. Now, you cannot directly create a mask, but you can do this. So here's the problem. This is on its own. However, if you apply a clipping mask here, so let's say I applied orange and applied a clipping mask, it is like it's not working, right? It should be applied to just that area. It won't because it's a blend if. However, if you're interested in creating a mask out of it, what I would suggest you to do is first make a copy. All right? Now, convert it into a smart object. Right-click on it, and then convert to smart object. Now you see the transparency over there, right? And now you can make a selection by holding the Control or Command, clicking on the thumbnail. Now you have a selection. Now you can delete it if you want to. And just with that layer selected, you click on the mask. Now you have a mask. See that? See, there's a lot of workarounds. I wish Adobe would add that feature. So, any questions about blend if? We're doing pretty fine on time. Any questions? Nothing? It's all clear? Yes, ma'am. So, well, here's the thing. The way the light falls in a day is absolutely different as it is at the night. So if you do apply a nighttime sky, there's a great lookup table to convert stuff to night. And I actually have a video about it on my YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. So here's the thing. Just assume that you have added a nighttime sky. Add a nighttime sky, and then you can apply a color lookup table and change the 3D LUT file. See how simple that is? It's by the name, night from day. There you go. You select that, it turns to night. Now, all you have to do is add a nighttime sky, and it will look beautiful. There's a lot of ways in which you can add highlights and highlights on the trees. If you stay after the class, I'm going to show how to do it. I have some files. I'm going to show it personally. All right, any other questions? Yes, sir. So the question is, if the sky was purple, the new sky or the old sky? The existing sky, right? If the sky was purple, you have a good point. It probably would be difficult to work on blend if, but you can try different channels. See if it works, right? It's a trial and error thing, but I'm sure it would work. If it doesn't, there are dozens of techniques to figure that out. I'm going to give you a flow chart which will allow you to make it easier for you. All right, let's move on to the next one. So, what do we have next? Let me check. All right, logos, graphic designers. This one is for you. Let's have a look. So your client sends you this. This one is not completely black at all. You have a background. It's kind of low res. So for converting this into a vector, for those of you who use Illustrator, you know image trace and all of that. However, to remove the background, in this case, what is the differentiating factor between the background and the subject? Contrast, brightness. It's brightness in my opinion. It's art, so I cannot say your answer is wrong. So there you go. So double-click on the right-hand side of the layer. I'm so tired of saying it. Double-click on the right-hand side of the layer. The layer styles dialog box will show up. Anyway, so double-click on the right. Just unlock it first. It's good to do that. Double-click on the right-hand side of the layer. Now, we want to take away the bright areas. So, boom, gone. Simple. Was it simple? It's simple. So now, I would suggest you put a black background underneath it and check whether it's good, or a very dark background, right? It's not good at all. It's bad. Let's go back to the layer size dialog box. Now, when you have put a black background, now you do it. So now, let's take this. It's very harsh, so you would hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on it to make sure that the edges are smooth. Right? Just that. Don't worry about the white lines. That's fine. All right? Now what you can do, we learned the trick. Thank you for bringing that up, sir. How to convert it into a mask. Thank you for bringing that up. All we have to do is right-click on it and convert to Smart Object. Now it's a smart object of its own. What I would suggest is, anyway, this is a solid logo, just apply some colors to it. The lines will go away anyway. So click on the adjustment layer icon, choose solid color, choose whatever color you want to apply. I'm just going to choose black or whatever, something like this, hit OK, hold the Alt or Option, and click on the line between these two layers. Now it's all in one color, right? And to make it interesting, you can also apply a gradient. So click on the adjustment layer icon, and this time we're going to choose a gradient. Oh, where did that go? There you go. Now let's choose a gradient from black to white. Hit OK. It looks interesting. Hit OK again. Hold the Alt key or the Option key. Click on the line between these two. There you go. This is something interesting. Now, did you know that if you double-click on the adjustment layer, when the gradient shows up, you can actually move it up and down? So you can control it accordingly however you want it. Whatever gradient you have, no matter how complex you have, maybe this one, you can just move it. Oh, no, it's not happening. I don't know why it's not happening, but it should be happening. Probably I'm pressing the wrong buttons, but if you move it up and down, it does move here. I don't know. Oh, there you go. It's moving now. It's, by the way, guys, it's Photoshop 2020, so you know what I'm talking about. Oh, no. Adobe is taking its toll on me. Anyway, that's why I work with Adobe, don't work for Adobe. So there you go. This is interesting, isn't it? So we talked about BlendIf. Let's move on to another. How many of you shoot, portraits and weddings and all of that fancy stuff? Awesome, some of you guys do that. So sometimes you make selections for color grading as well. You want to add some mood to the photo. You want to add some drama to the photo. So you do some color grading for it. And you make some selection to do color grading. Maybe in the bright areas, you want a different kind of grade. Maybe in the dark areas, you want a different kind of grade. So let's start with this image. Okay? So I've already color graded it, but I'm going to do it again for you. So let me show you how I color graded it first. Because when you're at home, you do it much better than when you're live in front of 200 people. So have a look at this. So this is my color grade. Actually, the screen shows it to you in a much more saturated fashion. So it's not as saturated in my screen, but you can see the difference between before and after. So this is the before, this is the after. And you can similarly use BlendIf to apply color grading in specific areas depending upon the brightness levels. So first of all, let's say you wanted her face, the left side of her face, to be a little brighter. As you can see, there's a lot of shadow in this area because when you will apply contrast to it, this will become very dark. Also on his face as well, if you have a closer look, this area will become very dark. So we need to take care of that. To do that, let's create a curves adjustment layer and click in the middle and take it up like this. Okay? Now we only want to limit it to dark areas. So instead of trying to make a selection out of it, instead of trying to use channels to do that, you can directly use BlendIf. And you know what's great about using BlendIf? With channels, you cannot change the range later. But with BlendIf, you can do that. It's non-destructive. Double-click on the right-hand side of the layer and take the slider of the underlying layer from right to left. Now we are applying it in just that area. Now do keep in mind it's very, very harsh. So hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on the slider, and you can make it smoother. Just like that. So have a look. Here's the before, here's the after. We have brightened that particular area, but we have done that throughout the image. We don't want to do that. We just want to keep it in this area. So select the mask, press Ctrl or Command I to invert the mask. Now, what is the concept of mask? White shows and black hides. So you select the mask, you take the brush, white as the foreground color, and you just, with a soft brush, you paint around her face with white. Now the flow is low, let's increase it to 100. And let's paint it. But it's not painting. Can somebody tell me why? There's a great lesson to learn here. Overlay blend mode. So when you work with overlay blend mode, do not forget to change it back to normal. It's going to mess up your workflow, and you're going to be picking up your brains and pulling out your hair for a very long time. So just remember to do that. Okay, now it will paint. All right, there you go. Let's paint on his face too. Now keep in mind, at any time you can change the range, so that's not an issue. Now let's say on the highlights, you want this golden shade on the highlights. How do you do that? Let's create a color lookup table. And if you have worked with color lookup tables in Photoshop, if you have just worked a couple weeks with it, you will just memorize what each one does. It just comes to you automatically. So if you want a golden look, edgy amber is the one. If you want to add some warmth to it, crisp warm is the one. Like, just play with it. So I'm going to choose edgy amber. It adds this nice golden effect. But we only want it in the highlights. So double click on the right side of the layer. The layer styles will show up. Now it's all over the image. We want to take it away from the dark areas. So take it away from the dark areas, which is on the left-hand side. Take it away from the dark areas. Now we are going away from the dark areas towards the light. So just like this, it should be working. Photoshop 2020. Hold the Alt key or the Option key. Click on the slider to break it apart. And then now it's only applied to the bright areas. It's beautiful. Now let's take it even further. All right. So on the bright areas, there's a nice golden effect. But for the dark areas, I want this bluish effect. So for a really dark, nightly kind of dramatic look, Foggy Night is a great color lookup table. Click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose color lookup. And this time, let's go ahead and choose Foggy Night. It's great for the dark areas, but not throughout the entire image. Of course, you can apply it to the entire image if you want it to turn it to a haunted house. But double click on the right-hand side of the layer. Take the slider of the underlying layer from right to left. Hold the Alt or Option. We're doing the same thing. And now this is applied to the dark areas. Now you want to add an overall warmth to it. Now keep in mind, I'm overdoing this so that you can see the differences. If you want, you can group both of them. Select the first one, hold the Control or Command. Select the second one, Control or Command G to group them. You can control the opacity, see what looks good to you, and stop there. For me, let's say I'm going to stay at 80%. It's good for me. And now to add an overall warmth, I'm going to click on the adjustment layer icon, color lookup table, and then we're going to go for crisp warm. It adds an overall, warmth to the image. Of course, the opacity is too high. You can apply just a little bit of it, maybe about 30–35%, and there you have a nice color grade. So you didn't have to make a selection of the bright areas. You didn't have to make a selection of the dark areas of the skin. All you had to do is just apply blend if. And guess what? You can change. You can go back to those sliders later. So let's say you want to change the range of bright areas where let's say the golden effect is being applied. You double click on the right-hand side of the layer, and you can just change the range on the go, right? And increase the range, keep it at that, and there you have it. So that's how you can use blend if. We learned how to make the logos transparent. We learned how to replace the skies with just blend if and create advanced masks for color grading. So before we move on to the next segment, do we have questions about this? Any questions? No? Not at all? It just means that I'm doing awesome. Thank you. Oh, no. Yes, ma'am. Just kidding.
I don't know that much about color lookup, but I love this. I want to use it in the future. Can I create a color lookup?
Yes, you can. You can just go to. All right, now keep in mind, if you are making lookup tables, you cannot use masks. Okay? So you would have to create this mask separately later, the one we created here. So color lookup tables don't work with masks. So you would have to delete the mask or delete this layer. So once you have this made, you have a background layer there. All you have to do is to go to File and Export, and then choose Color Lookup Tables. Whoops, File, Export, Color Lookup Tables, and then it will be saved as a Color Lookup Table. You can import it into Color Lookup Tables adjustment layer. All right, let's move on to blend modes. This is going to be fun. So sometimes you don't even have to give a hint of selection. Blend modes will do the job for you. Now, I want to go a little away from selections into compositing. And how can you use blend modes as to create some realistic compositing? Let's start right here. So again, it's useful. We have another document open, which I'm not going to use. So I'm going to go to File, Close Others. I don't want to save it. There you go. So this is a document, and this is a background, and we have a reflection, and we have the subject. Okay? Simple. We have a different subject from a different background, and we have the reflection of the subject. It was in the original subject background, subject image. Now, how do you think we can blend the subject with that of the background? Anybody? Oh, I told you blend modes, of course. So now, in any image, nothing is going to be brighter than the source of light. Okay? Makes sense? Right? In any image, while creating a composite, please keep this in mind. Sometimes we brighten an area so much that it's brighter than the source of light. Okay? The source of light might or might not be in the frame. However, nothing is going to be ever brighter than the source of light. All right? So, in this case, the source of light, we can clearly see it's in the frame, it is the sky. So, of course, the subject is not going to be brighter than that, right? The only thing that subject will do in this image is darkening, right? The only purpose this subject has in this image is to darken it. The subject is not a light source. It's not going to brighten it. And what is the blend mode which darkens stuff? Multiply. So let's first change the blend mode of this reflection from normal to multiply. And let's also change the blend mode of the subject from normal to multiply. But it's looking okay. But the problem is the details of the background also show up. How do you think we're going to get rid of details? How do we get rid of details? Keep the color. Anyone? How can we do that? No. Anything else? Yes, ma'am? It won't remove the details of the mountain? Come on, you always do it. Let me give you a hint. You do it with your camera. You do it with the fast lens. What do you do? Blur it. Exactly. Who said that? What's your name, sir? Big round of applause for Jonathan. Awesome answer. Really appreciate it. Okay. So now, all we have to do is to blur the image, but just in that area, right? So take the background and make a copy of that area. Make a copy of the entire background. Now, we want colors of the entire image to blend in. That's why we just didn't make a blur of just that area as of now. We need to blur it all and then just keep that area. All right, so all we need to do is to go to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. All right, now we are blurring, it's looking nice, isn't it? So we are blurring it, it's looking pretty good, hit OK. Oh, low battery. So, why does it always happen in my class? So hold the Control or Command. Don't worry, I have a charger. So hold the Control or Command, click on the subject. It's going to make a selection of the subject. And then with the background copy, which you have blurred, you would click on the mask button, right? Now it's taking the color of that. I would give you 1 minute to think about it while I charge my stuff. All right. I'm so happy that at least the power brick doesn't require dongle. All right, there we are. Now the subject is looking pretty okay. But there's still a problem. The shadow is not looking okay because there's some dark areas underneath it. We need to remove the bright areas of the shadow from the shadow. So double click on the right hand side of the layer and then take the slider of the underlying layer from right to left. It's not solving the problem because that's not the shadow. So here's the shadow. Double click on the right hand side of the layer and take the slider of this layer from right to left. Solves that. There you go. Hold the Alt or Option, click on the slider to break it apart, and then you can just, also you can play with the other sliders as well. So have a look at this reflection down in here. This is a dark area, right? What if you want to remove this dark area of the underlying layer or the layer lying under it from the current layer? So take the slider of the underlying layer from left to right. Right? It looks better. Hold the Alt key or the Option key, click on it, break it apart, and create this kind of nice reflection effect. So that, all right, that looks okay. Now, once you have done that, of course, you can take the time to add some highlights on the right-hand side, some shadows on the left-hand side to make it more realistic. I'm going to show you the final result. All right, there you go. In this case, what I have done is I have added some brightening on the right-hand side, just a simple curves adjustment layer with that mask, just a simple curves adjustment layer on the left-hand side, and then you can also use color lookup tables, and then applied some color grading, just like we did in the previous example where we used blend diff with color grading. Similarly, the same color lookup tables here as well, the same color lookup tables, and there you go, an overall color grading. You see, whenever you're creating a composite, if at the end you apply a couple of global effects like lookup tables, it will just bring things together. Let me give you one more cheat code. If you're not able to match the colors of your composite, just create a black and white. Just convert it to black and white. And say this is a masterpiece, black and white, dramatic image. That's what I did in yesterday's Adobe Live, and people didn't know. Now you know that. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay. We can also mask fur or hair with blend modes. So let's open this photo. Now here comes the 50% gray idea. Now let me set things up for you. All right, so here we have a texture on a separate layer, and here we have our subject. Now there is a blend mode which hides everything which is 50% gray, makes everything which is brighter than 50% gray brighter, makes everything which is darker than 50% gray darker. Can anybody tell me what's that blend mode? You're right, you're not wrong. But that's not the blend mode I was looking for. Okay, so it's actually in the overlay group, and everything in the overlay group does the same. But the blend mode which we're going to use today is overlay. But you can apply the same thing with hard light, vivid light, it's the same thing. But hard mix is a little different. So, all right. So let's change the blend mode to nothing at the moment. Let's keep the texture at the top. Okay? Now, some of you might be thinking, why didn't I simply change the blend mode of the subject from normal to overlay? Because it wasn't working. So you need to put the texture at the top. There's a reason why. Trust me, there's a reason. The reason is actually, if you change the blend mode of the texture from normal to overlay, everything that was gray in that texture will go away, and those gray areas will be filled back again with the gray areas in the subject. All right? So let's change the blend mode from normal to overlay. Right? We are getting closer. It's still not as good. It's not good because sometimes you need to change the background according to the subject. Most of the times we change the subject according to the background, but sometimes you need to change the background according to the subject. What if we make it black and white? So let's just take away the colors. So create an adjustment layer, and you can create a black and white adjustment layer or hue saturation adjustment layer, and click on this button, Create Clipping Mask button. Now take the saturation to the left. It's matching even better, but it's also on the subject. Here is what we do. One thing that is better in Photoshop 2020 is the select subject. The edge detection is so much better in my opinion because I compared two. So once you have the subject selected, you can turn these off for your reference if you want to. When you have any of the selection tools selected, like the quick selection tool or the magic wand tool, any of those, select subject is going to show up. Click on select subject. It's going to make a selection of that. Now let's turn these on. We want to take this away from the texture. What do? We mask it. Now if we simply click on the mask button, it will just keep it. We want the opposite of it. So to do the opposite, to create an opposite mask, you hold the Alt key or the Option key and then click on the mask button. That area is taken care of. Now it still doesn't look good. The hair is not right. That's why we use the blend mode. You can take a brush, a soft round brush, and then if you want, you can decrease the flow to about 30–40%. Let's decrease it to 30%, and just start painting around the edge of the hair. Now you still might be thinking, what is he up to? It's still not looking good, right? It's still looking dark because we haven't yet adjusted the background. Now, it's still looking dark. It's looking okay, but it's still looking dark around the edges of the hair. So we need to brighten it up a little bit to match it. So click on the adjustment layer icon and then choose curves. And now we just want to limit the curves to the texture. So again, we need to click on this button and create a point in the middle and take it up, make it brighter accordingly. Now it's matching so much better, right? So we didn't have to go through hair selection and all of that. It's all matching so nicely. Any questions about this? Anything? Nothing at all? All right.
What if you wanted to keep the blue in that texture background?
Use a different technique. Yes, in this case we are going for texture, right? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So there's always, as we learned at the beginning, there is no best technique. Ask your image what's going to be best for it, okay? It's like, what is the best medicine? Like, there is no best medicine. You cannot give a best medicine to somebody. If there was, I would be the first to buy it. So now, let's look at the next one. We talked about blend diff, we talked about blend modes, we talked about masking hair and fur with blend modes. I wanted to show you one more example of it. I've already done it, but I just wanted to show that to you. We did the same process even in this case. Even if the hair is like pretty complex, this is the original image, right? We did the same thing. We applied a curves to brighten it all up, and there you go. It's so easy to do. And the great part about this is that it also keeps the original shadow. So this is the original shadow right there. It also keeps the original shadow. So you don't have to like create additional shadows and all of that. It keeps it. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Now we're going to talk about select and mask. And select and mask is one of those default techniques that I use all the time. If I have no idea on what technique to use, I go for select and mask. And today we're going to learn some tips and tricks about select and mask. So let's go ahead and open this image. And let's say, in this case, I would first try the color range. But let's say you're going for select and mask, and the background is very greenish, it's blurred, or something like that. And you're going with select and mask. Now, you would just click on any of the selection tools like the quick selection tool or the magic wand tool. At the top, you would go select and mask. And inside of select and mask as well, you have select subject. Let's click on select subject. It makes a pretty good selection. So what you want to be the background. So let's say I want to set on white. Everything that is selected is in original color. Everything which is not selected is in white. You can decrease the opacity of it to see which areas you missed. All right, once we have decided that, we can just zoom in and play with the second one, which is the Refine Edge tool. Just paint on the areas which are messy. Simple stuff. There you go. It automatically just analyzes the edges and creates them for you. But still, there's a problem. The problem is you still see the green edges right there. How do we remove that? Well, there's this thing at the bottom called decontaminate colors. You check that, and now with the latest versions of Photoshop, you have an option to control it. So as you can see, as soon as I checked in decontaminate colors, it went back in most of these areas. It didn't do a perfect job, but it definitely did a good job. Here's the before. You see the green. Here's the after. There's a lag. All right. Now let's change the output to new layer with a layer mask. You can change it to new layer, but I always want to have a mask. So new layer with a mask, hit OK. Now we need to understand what it did. So let's create a white solid color adjustment layer. And what it did was, if I just simply turn off the mask, see what it did? It looks so bad. But what it actually does is that it expands the subject from the edge, keeping the mask intact. Making sense? All right, so let me give you a visual representation of what it does. So this is just a visual representation, so don't judge me on my drawing. That's what every teacher says. So there you go. So let's say this was, what is happening? Oh, the brush tool. So there you go. Let's say you were, this is the object that you wanted to select. Let me change it to a hard brush so it's better. All right. This is the object you wanted to select. And when you selected, a little bit of the white stayed. So let's say you're making a selection, right? A little bit of the white stayed in between. Like in these areas, a little bit of the white stayed. When you check decontaminate colors, what it does is that it keeps the blue mask intact and it expands the red from the edges. That's why the image looks that strange. Right, look at this. That's the same thing happening here. Making sense now? All right. Okay, so let me close this. So select and mask, and we had a question from a lady there. I think you had a question about making selection smooth. So we are getting to that. So you can use two simple sliders to make your selections very smooth, even if it's jagged. So let's open this example. Here we have made a selection. If you just zoom in, this is like very minute stuff. Look at how jagged the mask is. So this is the original image, as you can see. So we masked it out. Look at how bad the mask is. However, I just edited it, and here's the after. Look at how smooth that is, right? So here's the before, here's the after. See that? And it's very easy to do. So here we are. Here we have the mask. Let's open up select subject. So sorry, select and mask. With the mask selected, you can just double click on the mask. That opens up the select subject, select and mask. If it doesn't open that up, with the mask selected, open up the properties, or go to window and then make sure properties is checked, and then you can click on select and mask right there. Now inside of select and mask, let's change the view to on black so that we can see what's happening. And as you can see, the edges are pretty jagged. All you have to do in this case is add some feather to it. When you add a feather, it's just like adding Gaussian blur to the mask. Now, here's the magic. All you have to do is to add some contrast. Contrast will make the bright areas brighter and the dark areas darker, thus making the blurred areas more closer and sharper. So if you had a contrast, have a look what it does. See that? Now, if you see white edges around the corners, you can use Shift Edge to kind of bring it inside, right? Now, there is a demerit to it that it sometimes makes things a little smoother. We'll get to that in the second example. But this is a really good way to use just two sliders, feather and contrast, to create sharp and smooth edges in masks. Often we have very rugged edges, even more rugged than this, pixelated stuff. This can be easily solved with this technique. Hit OK once you're satisfied with it. Let me show you one more example. In this is a very harsh example. This is an example of an apple. Look at how bad it is. Like, it's really, really bad, the masking. We're going to do the same thing with the mask selected, select and mask. And now let's add some feather until everything is smooth. So if the feather is up to, let's say, 4.4, you still see these ups and downs. You would increase and stop at just the point where all of these ups and downs are gone. So do you see ups and downs here? I see a little bit over there, so I'm going to increase it just a little more, just like that. Now, the more you increase the feather, there is a chance that it will lose some details. It will miss out something. Let's increase the contrast now. It is good over here. It is good over there. But here, have a look. It just made that round edge. That's not a problem. We can fix that. But except for that, everything seems to be okay. Hit OK once you're satisfied, and then you can just simply take your brush and black as the foreground color inside of the mask and just fix that up, right? So, any questions about this? Any questions? No questions at all? Pretty simple stuff, just two sliders, feather and contrast. All right, let's move on to the last section of today's class. We still have 15 more minutes, right? Cool. So the last section here is refining it. Once you have made the mask, once you have created the selection, we need to refine it. Sometimes it leaves those white edges. Sometimes it leaves those halos around the edge. How do we refine that? How do we remove that? We definitely learned about a couple of techniques like using blend modes or using the clone stamp tool to kind of fill that up. There are some other techniques as well. So let's move on to example number 19. All right, removing halos using blend modes. Let's have a look at this. So I tried, this is the original image. Have a look, so many hair, right? Such nice flowing hair. But when I masked it and put it on a red background, you see this is not looking right. Why do you think this is not looking right? The mask is perfect. Have a look, the mask is perfect. Why do you think it's not looking right? Something is off. The color is off. And the hair is supposed to darken stuff, right? It's not supposed to brighten it. So simply change the blend mode in this case from normal to multiply. Now the hair look fine, but everything else becomes red. We don't want that either. So this is multiply. We have to make a copy of this. With that selected, press Ctrl or Command J. Now we have a duplicate. Now once we have a duplicate, we will change that multiply to normal. Now we had a question in the beginning of the session as to how to create multiple masks of the same layer. That's what we're going to do here as well. So we already have a mask here, but we don't want to destroy that. We want to create one more mask for this. And the way we do that is by putting this layer inside a group. With this layer selected, press Ctrl or Command G, and then create a mask out of this inside the group. Okay? Now we will just remove the hair areas. So take the brush, soft round brush, and you can decrease the flow if you want to about 50%, and then just paint those areas with black. Bring the hair back. Now I'm not being careful, but you get the idea of what you can do here. So easily you're getting the hair back, paint on these areas, around the edges. See that? Now you need to be careful to kind of take care of that properly, but you get the idea on how to do it. So we are using the multiply blend mode to just bring in the hair properly. I have taken the time to kind of do it, so this is actually, it's the same thing actually, it's the final result. So any questions about this? Any questions? Nothing at all? All right, so let's move on to our last example, which is how can you use mask density to clean up your selection. But I didn't add this to my agenda or even lessons, but somebody asked me a question in the beginning of this class, so I'm going to add a new feature tutorial as well. So let's say this was your selection that you wanted to make. Let me add this photo right there. Okay, there we go. Let's say you want to select the middle part. Right? There's a new feature in Photoshop 2020 and that is the object selection tool. If you click and hold in the select in this group, quick selection tool group, the object selection tool is going to show up. You can choose lasso or rectangle. We're going to go for rectangle and just make a selection of this one. Now, it's going to make a pretty good selection. I hope my Photoshop doesn't crash, but let's hope that, I hate that ball. We all do. All right, so the selection is pretty good. Now, this is one of my favorite features of Photoshop CC 2020. Now, all we have to do is to create the mask here, but before we do that, this is one of the lesser known features of the object selection tool, which I really love. Once you have the object selection tool selected, now this is an area we did not want to select. This is an area as well we did not want to select. So inside of the object selection tool, just change it to lasso and hold the Alt or Option and say to Photoshop, all right, this is not the object we want to select. It automatically cleans that up. All right, this is not the area I want to select. You do that, it automatically cleans that up. See how convenient that is? Now, this is the object. So you would hold the Shift key this time. This is the object I want to select. Now, it didn't do a good job, but you can refine it further. So this is not the object I want to select. See how easy it is to refine it? So that is one way of getting good selection. This is an object I want to select. It did a pretty good job. So you can go on and on. Here as well, this is not the object I want to select. Okay, got it? How easy that is? Now, once you have that zeroed in, you can do one more thing. Let's say you created the mask, okay? And let's say you put a black background. Let's create a solid color adjustment layer, and let's create a black background like this. To find out which areas you're missing out, you have to select the mask, open up the properties of the mask, right? If you cannot see the properties, once you have the mask selected, go to Window and then make sure Properties is checked, and then simply decrease the mask density. That way you will be able to see which areas are missing out, and then you can go back to the mask, take your brush with white as the foreground color or black as the foreground color accordingly. You would just fill back these areas, and that's the way to go. Okay? Any questions about this? Nothing at all? Simple stuff. Let me show you something which a lot of people do not use, and it's a tool people don't tend to use a lot, but it's a very, very, very useful tool, especially if you're compositing people and you're getting a lot of halos, and you want to blend in the edges very well. There was a question about that in the beginning. This is a very good tip to do that. Okay, so let me open a finished image right there. Okay, so this is a kind of finished image. So we're going to change the background to black. So let me change it to absolutely black. It's a pretty good selection, right? But there are some white edges around the corner. Or on some, there are. On some leaves, are they leaves? On some leaves, there aren't. So how do we remove the white halos around the ones where we have them? So make sure you select the mask, and this is a very interesting tool. Just select the smudge tool right there, okay? Strength 50%, and all you have to do is just push it in. See that? Going away. You need to be a little careful because the edges are together. So it isn't on all the leaves, it's just on some. And just for some, smudge tool is a very great way to do it. So have a look. On this, it's absolutely fine. But here it is there. So use the smudge tool to just simply bring that in. All right? Clear? Crystal clear? All right, let's move on. We are pretty much done with this session. However, I promised you something. I promised you a roadmap. So up until now, we have covered a lot of techniques. But how do you decide which technique to pick? Which is going to be the best technique for your image? Which leads to my second question, and that is, do you really pick one? Do you really pick one? No, you don't. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. If you pick one and it worked completely for you, you don't pick another one. But if you picked one, it didn't work completely, you can combine it with another technique. However, you always pick one to begin with, right? So let's get back to the presentation. Oh no. All right, so let me end the show, and we're going to just try to open that again. All righty. Let me close PowerPoint. Force quit. Is it force quitting yet? Ignore. Okay. All right, it's closed. I hope it's closed. There we are. So let's open that again. All right, cool. Okay. So we were here. All right. Choosing the best selection method. This is the most important part of this presentation. If you didn't take anything away from this presentation, this is the thing. And don't you worry about taking photos because you can download the presentation yourself. I gave you a link in the beginning. I'll give you again in the end on how to download the presentation. But if you still want to take pictures, you're free to do so. That's what I think. I don't know what Adobe allows you to do. So let's have a look. We learned it in the beginning. Both the image and the subject decide the masking technique. All right? Both the image as a whole and the subject and the difference between it decide the masking technique. All you have to do is do this. Can you read what's in all of these? You can? No? Yes or no? But you will be able to download it anyway. So it doesn't matter if you can read it or does not read it. You'll be able to download it. So let me just end the show right there. And let me open up Photoshop. I know you wouldn't be able to read it. So that's why I saved it separately so that I can show you. I can zoom in and show you. You'll be able to download it anyway. So you have to look at the image and ask yourself, what separates the subject from the background? Is it just color? Is it brightness only? Is it brightness and color? Is it structure? Is the background close to 50% gray? If it's just color, first you will try color range with sampling. If it didn't work, you will use channels. So similarly, I have instructions for everything. If it's the structure, maybe let's say the background is pretty blurred and the subject is pretty sharp, then you have a second question. Are the edges between the subject and the background clearly defined? If the edges are a little blurry, they're not clearly defined. If they are clearly defined, yes, then is the background solid? Is the background completely solid, like blue, gray, green, like a solid color? If it is solid, yes, start with the magic wand tool. If it's not solid, use a quick selection tool. Let's say if the background is blurred, then you would use something like a quick selection tool or select and mask. So similarly, it's a very comprehensive flow chart that will help you decide which technique that you're going to start with. All right? So I'll give you the download link. You can take pictures if you want to. If you don't get it, let me know after the class. Now, there's one more flow chart. We have 1 more minute to go, and it won't take much time. There we go. And that is ways to refine, mask, or remove halos. So after you have made the selection, after you have created the mask, how do you refine it? How do you remove the halos? First of all, there are 4 options, 4 things you can do. What do you want to do? Do you want to clean up the mask? Do you want to just remove the halos? Do you want to repair the mask like we did in the last example where there was this cactus or something plant? And do you want to smooth out the jagged edges? If you want to smooth out the jagged edges, we learned that. Use 2 magic sliders. What were they? Feather and contrast. So similarly, we have techniques listed down for everything. So that was not pretty much it for this session, because I have to give you some cliche slides, which is this. Well, you can follow me there on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Especially on YouTube, do follow me. I have a lot of tutorials that you can follow. I am the founder of Piximperfect and a Photoshop instructor, not certified. And let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, do the surveys. You know, please do the surveys. You know, if you don't want me next year, leave a bad review. If you do want me next year, leave a good review. It's up to you. Vote in the name of democracy. All right, I hope this class was helpful to you. Thank you so much for coming here. It really means a lot to me.